go. I think we're good to go. Okay, cool. We're diving in. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday. I know we're across lots of different time zones, so I appreciate everyone taking the time for this. I'd say me talking at you guys is going to be about like 10, maybe 15 minutes, and then we have a little activity at the end as well. So, give yourself 20, 30 minutes. I'll also be taking questions at the end, of course. So today we're going to be talking about pitching in the music journalism world. I'm assuming most of you here are either currently maybe writing for a publication or a blog or some sorts, or you're wanting to learn more or anything like that. So you're in the right place. The goal of this workshop is to kind of remove that mystery around the pitching process, unless you were fortunate to have worked somewhere where they like laid everything out in front of you. It's kind of hard to understand, and it's not like you can type in like how to pitch to a publicist, Reddit, and like all the correct answers are going to come up. So we're gonna be touching on that side, and then just how to find the best contact when you're looking who to even pitch to, and then sharing best pitching practices and examples. So we're going to cover everything from pitching to artists and their teams, pitching for press passes for like if you want to get a media or photo pass for a concert, and then pitching internally to your editor if you're on a staff. This, of course, will vary by teams, but just some general best practices. But before we dive in, a little bit of context on myself and why I feel qualified to talk about this. I'm the founder and EIC of Luna. I started Luna 6 years ago, which is really crazy. It makes me feel old now that I can say that. And prior to that, I'd done college newspaper and a few other publications. I've literally been on a publication since like the 6th grade, which is crazy. So lots of journalism experience. And I think I get a little bit of a unique position as I am on both sides. I'm currently pitching to people for the magazine. I pitch to publicists and whatnot, but people also pitch to me. I publicists and my team pitch to me as well. So I see both sides. I see what's worked and what I prefer versus not. I definitely started in most of everyone's boat of cold pitching, which is really hard, and we're going to get into that. That's something that I'm so grateful that I don't do as much anymore, because you'll see you're starting to pitch in the same circles, and building up those relationships make such a difference. But definitely still do it sometimes, and probably the first like 2 years of Luna was a lot of cold pitching, and it's definitely been a long journey to get there. So first, let's talk about who's who. Like who are you pitching to? What are the different music industry roles? A question I do get asked a lot in our team is, oh, I found their agent email. Can I reach out to them for something? Or I'm only finding this email, or, what's kind of like the hierarchy. So first and foremost, remember you're pitching to people, which sounds like such a basic statement, but I started Lou when I was 19. I was a sophomore in college, and this was all very new to me. I had like 2 months at a label I'd interned at, and that was the extent of my music industry experience. And it was really eye-opening to quickly learn like these were people just like me, maybe like a few years older, but they are in music because they love it, and for the most part they're pretty chill people. It's a blanket statement, of course, but something I always try to remind myself and my staff is there's someone on the other end of the computer screen. Maybe you're stressed because you haven't heard back, or you're on deadline, or yada yada. Just remember they're a person, and of course be professional, but you don't need to be overly formal. Like, remember, most of the time this is like a 27-year-old living in Bushwick is probably a high chance of who you're talking to. So the breakdown of who you are pitching to and who you'll be working for starts with the publicist. An artist publicist, their whole job is to do press and PR. So 9 times out of 10, if you're working with a more like established artist and they have a team, that is going to be your go-to contact. We'll get into finding contacts later, but that should be the easiest to find. Like literally typing in, can't think of an artist name to save my life, Lofty publicist, like that should be the easiest contact to find out of that group. So always when you're looking to get press pass or interview an artist or anything like that, try and start with the publicist, since that is literally your job to coordinate. Then we go to the manager, pretty self-explanatory. A lot of artists, maybe they don't have a full team yet, but they have a manager. The manager kind of connects everyone, or the manager would then be able to connect you with the publicist. So manager is kind of like, okay, I can't find the publicist online anywhere, but I am seeing their manager. I'll just hit them up. Next is agents. Agents are specifically usually for booking. So that's kind of how you'll see that contact a lot is for bookings, contact this email. I would avoid reaching out to agents with press related things. Maybe if you're looking for Actually, no, I don't even want to suggest that. I would say in general, if you are looking exclusively for pitching for editorial, anything like that, don't reach out to the agents. That's not going to be a good contact for you. On the other hand, if you are someone that's booking shows and stuff like that, agents are going to be your contact. And those should also be pretty easy to find as well. Most agencies, their whole business obviously is based on booking artists. So they want to make it easy to find them. And then lastly is artists. Not all artists have teams. You might be working with someone a little bit smaller, independent, and their contact info is easily available. Like, go for it. So that's kind of hierarchy I would start with when you are looking for contacts and just people that you're going to be engaging with. Most of the times it can be publicists, followed by the managers. Then you still have agents and artists. Cool. So contact info, like I said, how do you find this contact info? Where do I go? And once again, 8 times out of 10, it should be easy, but sometimes you're really going through the trenches. So always starting off with artist pages, whether it's their Instagram, website, honestly giving a shout out to Facebook and YouTube still. I got a typo on Facebook. A lot of artist websites, there might be a contact info page, or on the bottom, they'll have like management, publicists, anything like that. So starting off with their website, then we go to their Instagram. If they don't have an actual, email in the bio, a lot of times like they'll have the contact feature and it'll have an email. And I put Facebook and YouTube because I know it seems outdated, but back in the day, and still for a lot of artists, they will put their contact email in those places as well. So Facebook is usually like on the contact section and YouTube on the about section. So still some options. Other routes, you can kind of go to the label website. You can know what label they're with, or their publicist website. I swear to God, nine times out of 10, the way I find a publicist is the artist name, publicist, just searching that, or artist name, PR. That's kind of the most basic way. If you are struggling to find contact info and it's a smaller artist, maybe they don't have a full team, it's okay to slide in the DMs. I just don't suggest that all the time. And the way I would go about that is saying, hey, like, I would love to interview, like, what's the best email to contact you at, or looking for the best email to contact you at. I personally don't recommend trying to like do business in the DMs. I'm like pretty against that, but maybe that's where my like inner boomer comes out, but try to steer it to email as much as possible. All right, let's get into the actual what to include in pitches. So this is for an artist feature. This is for editorial features. This is, I want to interview said artist for said publication I work with. Overall, straight and to the point. That's what I've learned has been the most helpful, as someone that, ignore my lorem ipsum section. That's what I've learned to be the most straightforward, easy to understand from someone that pitches and someone that receives pitches. Just go straight to the point. So little small intro on yourself, context on your publication. Are you an online publication? Are you a print publication? Do you focus on a particular thing? Are you based a specific place? Like, we don't need the whole life story, but just so they get a sense of, it's a vibe check, and this can be 1 to 2 sentences. And I do have an example after this so you guys can see. And then go straight into the ask. Be clear, be straightforward. Where is this going? Is this going on the website, print, social, specific story that you're working on? Is this part of a bigger story? What are the requirements? Are you working with a specific deadline? Is the interview done via phone, in person, email? Do you want to do a video interview? Like, just lay out all the logistics. It can be, you can cover a lot of information, but there's no need to fluff it up. I would avoid going like full fangirl mode. Of course, you can say like, we love blah, 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 or like, I love the last album. You can put in a personal note, but don't get like too intense, because that also is a little bit of a turnoff. It's nice to acknowledge it. And that's that. My example would be, this is actually the template that I recommend my staff uses. Of course, everyone can tweak it how they want, but just straightforward to the point, like, hi, blah, 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 like, remember their person, like, hope you've had a good weekend, hope the week is going well. If it's like a directly to the artist, like, I saw that, this is your little spot for something personal, human to human. And then dive into your intro. My name is Sophie. I'm reaching out on behalf of the Luna Collective, an online creative platform and film-only magazine. We spotlight a variety of creatives and here to support rising artists. Honestly, I could probably get trimmed down a little bit more since we're like a little bit more established now, but that's where you give your little context. Obviously, if you're writing for like the New York Times, probably don't need a little one-liner, but if you're writing for a smaller publication, there's where you put your one-liner. And then we go into the ask. We're always looking to collaborate with new artists and would love to do a feature with blah, blah, blah. And here's the placement for our website and Instagram. This involves, here's the process, a Q&A via email, Zoom, or call, flexible timeline. There's a deadline. Not required, but I also recommend if you have like a press deck or anything like that from your publication, that's where it goes well. So that gives a little more info. Happy to send over any additional information needed. Look forward to hearing from you. Very straightforward to the point. I'm gonna be honest, now when I am pitching to places, since I'm not doing a whole lot of cold emails, like it is as straightforward as like, hey, blah, 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 like, how are you? Love this artist's name, would love to run an interview for the website, like let me know if you're interested. That's of course once you're more established. I will say as you start building up relationships, like take note of who you worked with, because that's where you can plug that. So if it's like, hi Grace, hope you've had a great weekend, loved working on this piece with you, and hyperlink out. So that gives them context like, oh, I've worked with this person before, I enjoyed doing this with them. Like try to give context where you can. And on the same end, like it's kind of weird if you always every time like reintroduce yourself and the publicist is like, yeah, I know, like we've worked together. So, you don't need to take like intense notes on it, but just start having a mental checklist of like, oh, I've emailed blah, blah, blah. Okay, so then on the, ignore my lorem ipsum slide again, I'm sorry. On the press end, so this is you're reaching out to a publicist or a team to get a media or press pass for a concert. Usually the rule with that is you get a free ticket, essentially get a media pass, and in return you offer coverage for said site. So pretty much the same approach, except this I argue is a little bit more straightforward. So same intro, same context, and then be clear and concise with the ask. What the artist is, because I manage multiple artists, venue, city, date. Do you need a photo pass or just a media pass? AKA, are you going to be going up taking photos or not? Are you trying to also set up an interview or portraits ahead of time, and where the coverage will be shared? So straightforward as well. Here's our example, very clean cut. Like from the flip side, if I'm getting a pitch like this, like if my staff is pitching to me, I just want to know, literally all I need to know is artist, city, and you need a photo media pass, like straightforward. So making clear they know where it's going, what the coverage is like, etc. I didn't include this, but something that comes up is +1s, like kind of that etiquette. Personally, I do not usually ask for the +1 in the initial ask unless like the only way I'm going to go to this event is a +1. So in this such situation, I would say I wanted to reach out about applying for a photo pass +1 and continue. For the most part, if it is a show that I'm trying to get a +1 to, I'd put in this initial request, they say yes, and then I say like, amazing, thanks so much. Would it be possible to get a +1? If not, no worries. Like, I don't think it's worth pushing. Most of the time they can accommodate it. I'd say for, a sold out show in LA or New York, it's maybe a different story. But for the most part, I don't prefer to keep it in my initial ask, but it does come up. Okay, pitching your editor. This, of course, varies by publication. This is just my 2 cents. For us, we don't have a super intense, if anyone on my staff is here, I think a few of you are, we don't have a super intense pitching process to our editors. First, know who you're supposed to be pitching to. Does your publication have specific genre editors or types of editors? Because it is a little frustrating when it's like, here are our very specific genre editors, and then you go pitch to someone like random on the team. So make sure you understand like what your team's official pitching process is, and do they prefer it like Slack versus email, like kind of the more logistical side of it. But in terms of actually including what to have in your pitch, I like having, kind of a 1 sentence on the artist and the genre of anything noteworthy, and why they'd be a good fit for the publication. If you're trying to do a special angle, you don't always have to, and if there's a timeline. So, hey, Sophie, I'm really interested in interviewing Chaperone. I just saw her at Lollapalooza, like the crowd loved her energy, and I would love to do a story about her takeover, the rise of a Midwest princess or whatever, and I'd love to get this up sometime this month, just because like this is what's hot right now. That it could be as specific as that, or I'm not kidding, it could literally be like, hey, I love the new Porter Robinson album, which I don't. I love the new Porter Robinson album. Would love to do a piece on that, or I'd love to reach out to this artist to interview them. It doesn't have to be, I personally don't require a whole story, but once again, straightforward to the point. Your highlights are always going to be artist, genre, what is so special about them, like what is the pitch, and if you need anything from your editor, like I'm having trouble finding a best contact for them, having trouble thinking of a creative angle or anything like that. Okay, so follow-ups. This is, I feel like, a part of the business that I never really understood because it was never taught, and I'm so thankful that I've learned about it, how powerful follow-up can be. But as someone on the flip end of emails, I think follow-up etiquette is far and wide. Personally, I follow a one follow-up 7 days after the initial email. So if I emailed someone today, I'd follow up next Wednesday. After that, if I don't hear after, a couple more days, that's when I'd maybe look for a new contact. You can do a second follow-up after that a few days later. After that, I would leave it. It's kind of annoying. Maybe they'll eventually come back to it. Maybe they didn't see it, but chances are the third, the fourth, the fifth follow-up is just going to be annoying if they see it rather than, the first and the second. Personally, I hate when people email me on the weekend. I use an email scheduler. I do emails on the weekend, but I don't want anyone to feel pressured to respond. So I schedule them for, Monday morning. That's a personal preference. But just being aware also of your follow-ups. Maybe you're on a deadline or you're waiting for a press pass or something. So it's time sensitive and you're like, Sophie, I can't wait 7 days. Yeah, of course, use your best judgment, but do not follow up like every day or two. I think that's just a little crazy to me, especially if it isn't something time sensitive or something that, maybe the publicist is waiting to hear back as well. So give it a week, usually give it a few more days after that. That's when maybe we start looking at other avenues or also just maybe making other plans, especially if you're looking to get a press pass. Maybe that's when we start looking for going through the opener or something like that. Okay, we have an activity we're gonna do. So I want everyone to put together a pitch. As we just went over, it could be an artist of your choosing, as if you're pitching to me, your editor. So no formal email. I'm not like a publicist. I'm your editor, which some of you I am. Can be super straightforward. As I mentioned, I'll go back to the slide so you can see what you want included in it, and you can just type it in the chat. So this guy. So your artist, genre, one sentence, kind of anything noteworthy. You guys can skip the why they are a good fit, but just why we think we should cover them, the angle. So that's everyone's activity. I'll give y'all 2 minutes. I'm not going to time it, but I'll give it a second. I should play like Jeopardy music, honestly. Don't be shy. You guys can put it in the chat. It's a safe space. It's 14 of us who are all probably have similar taste, similar boat. Guys, I'm wanting to see things in the chat. I'm wanting some examples. Doesn't need to be anything intense, anything scary. It's just us. I'll give y'all another minute or so, and then we'll also have time for questions if anyone has anything specific they wanted to go over. Okay, does anyone want to, let me go back. Does anyone want to share a pitch? You can put it in the chat. You guys, don't do this to me. Someone pitch. I'll put in a pitch. I'll put in, oh, here we go. Yes, perfect. And I love Alex Page. We used to work with her a lot. I went to school with her. Yes, that's perfect. Yay, snaps. Thank you, Alejandra. That's perfect. Yes, and I love Alex. I love to see that. And yeah, that's actually, I love that you mentioned the Phoebe Bridgers one. That is like providing context. Like they're this vibe or they're this vibe. Like if it's a smaller artist or if it's someone that maybe your editor might know or something like that, just providing context that immediately lets me know their vibe. Good job. Love that. Does anyone else have a pitch they want to share? I'm not going to pressure anyone more. I just needed someone. Cool. That's it. That's all I have for you guys. Like I mentioned, this is recorded. This will be up on our YouTube. You'll be able to access this. Put my email in the chat too if anyone has questions that come up later. Also going to stay on, of course, if anyone has specific questions. Sophie at thelunacollective.co, not .com, but .co. So always available if anyone has questions about literally anything. But I'll stay on for a few minutes if anyone has questions or anything that's come up. Let me know. And yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to do this. Yes, Catherine, let me see if I can unmute you because I think I have it as a setting where you can't unmute. Yes, cool. Okay, Catherine, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So what happened if you pitch something and you follow up at least one or two times and then they come out with another project, maybe like a EP or something a few months later, or they come out with a tour and you want to see the show.
Yeah.
Is it like nosy to request something again? Because I mean it's been a short period of time, so they probably still recognize your publication.
That's a great question. I would say no, not nosy at all. I think that your like cool off period maybe is like 2 months. You reach out, you get ghosted, you don't hear, a month goes by, their tour is coming to you, or they, yeah, have a new project, reach out again. I think
Mhm.
that's totally fine. I think if it's like a new thread, a new thing that you're pitching, that's totally fair. I just want to
Because
do it.
I understand that a lot of them are like, like Warner, Universal, or Atlantic, and they
Yeah.
get a lot of pitches. So there's like hundreds and hundreds of them, and they totally forget about like one in a million, and then they choose like the top one.
Exactly. And that's a good example of building relationships makes a huge difference. Like when I was initially doing when I first started Luna, I did not get a lot of emails back, honestly. Like that
Mhm.
just was the nature. But I had been doing it for so long that there really was a turning point where all of a sudden, like now these are people that are like genuinely my colleagues. And when I send an email to them, I know I'll get a response back, even if the response is, hey, we can't accommodate this request. To me, like that's
Mhm.
something, I'd rather be
Yeah.
down than kind of left hanging. So I think there's an appropriate time period between a new request and I would say, yeah, a month or two. Because like you said, they're not remembering every single person. And maybe they declined a previous request and they just didn't email you back, but now you're requesting for something else, or they're in like a new press cycle and maybe it makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, because like now in my music industry journey, I've found that people are pitching things to me rather than me pitching them
It's weird, isn't
ideas.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
And
weird.
you probably start seeing what you like in pitches too, and that kind of affects the way you pitch. I know once I became someone that started getting a lot of pitches, I became really not particular, but I'm like, I don't need a whole blurb. Like straightforward and to the point is all I need. And I looked back and I'm like, why was I giving my whole life story to a publicist? Like they just want to know
Yeah.
basics.
Yeah, I'm getting all these like press releases and I'm like, I don't even know what these things are now.
Yes. Well, and actually on the press release front, you bring up a good topic when when you're writing for a publication or once a publicist gets your email, you'll start getting these PR blasts. And at the beginning, it's like, wow, this is so cool. I'm getting pitches. And then you start getting a lot and you're realizing like, I can't respond to all of these. Most of these are not like, they're not personal pitches per se. And sometimes that doesn't mean that the publicist wants to actually do editorial coverage with you. So it is definitely a learning curve. It's an exciting learning curve. But yeah, there's no really like right or wrong way. I guess it's how you prefer to like go about contacting people or getting contacted as well.
Oh, and another question I have, because I asked another music industry person this, and she said it's a personal preference, but I don't know. How many publications should you write for? Like, because it is like mostly unpaid, but then you don't want to overwhelm yourself.
Totally. Yeah, that's a great question. I think I personally would say two, maybe three, depending on your bandwidth. I like at Luna, I don't limit, like I'm cool if writers write for other publications. I don't feel weird about that. All publications are different. They first, I guess, checking in their rules. Do they care if you're writing for other ones? Is it you can only write for other publications? It's if different genres, or are you only allowed to write for certain genres for whatever? I think it's helpful writing for more than one when you're first starting out and you're in college to see how different places work and you can learn from different publications to be the best writer or editor or whatever. And that's why I always tell my writers too. I'm like, if you write for somewhere else and you really like how they do something, you really like a system that they have, like, let me know, open to feedback. I would say after two is where maybe you might get a little stretched thin. It depends on the requirements. Once again, if one publication only requires you to write once every 4 months versus one is requiring a weekly write-up, your bandwidth is going to look different. And then also what their coverage is looking like maybe different publications serve different needs for you. Maybe one publication is all about live music coverage, and those are the ones you try and get media passes through. And maybe one is dedicated to rising female artists in a specific city. So I would say if I were to like summarize the answer, probably no more than two, just so you can learn, but not spread yourself too thin. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. Okay, Stephanie, regarding interviews, for writers who are just starting out with freelancing, should we secure the interviewee first or pitch the interview to a publication first? Good question. Maybe this varies by publication. Personally, I would rather get pitched first and then you go to the artist, because it's kind of awkward if you do an interview with the artist and then you don't have anywhere for it to go. Also, a lot of times if you are freelance and you're pitching to an artist, more so an artist team, if they're independent, they probably won't care as much. They want to know where it's going. So if you were to, if I was like, hey, I have this pitch, I'd love to do an interview with Lofty for the Luna Collective, and they're like, cool, like interview security, you do the interview, and then you pitch it to us, and for some reason we don't respond to you or don't take it, you got to awkwardly shop around. Versus if you pitched us first and you're like, hey, I want to do this interview with blah blah blah, then you could come back and say, here is said interview. Does that make sense? Answer the question. Cool. Good questions. Yeah, I mean, the reason why I like doing these virtual panels so much is I like never was taught anything. I never had like anyone to ask questions to, so it's definitely been a figuring out as I go along. And sometimes my writers will ask questions where I'm like, oh my God, I remember when I used to like not know that. Like this is also second nature to me, but I'm always happy to share anything like this. And so much is publication by publication, as others have told you, and as I keep saying, but I do think there are some general best practices. Does anyone else have any questions? Also, my email's in the chat too, so if you end up thinking of something later or later down the line, you're in a weird situation that you're not sure the best etiquette, definitely please hit me up. Cool. Well, I think we're going to end it there. Thank you guys so much for taking the time on your Wednesday. As always, if you guys have any questions regarding this stuff, hit me up. I'm here to answer any questions, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. See y'all.